Now, before I went on break, I stated that Cynthia Erivo had no right to push this racist propaganda on children, something that I stand by wholeheartedly. And earlier, I also stated that this movie was made with the sole purpose of altering history for a new generation of children. And before anyone can say that I'm jumping to conclusions, take a look at Exhibit A. Now, as you can all clearly see, this tweet comes from Tay, a young girl who went to go see the Harriet Tubman film. Tay now believes that some black people were just as bad as white people during slavery. Now let's take a look at another tweet. This time, this one comes from Zoe. Let's see what good old Zoe had to say about the Harriet Tubman film. This is a shame. This is a darn shame. So once again, I think you guys can all clearly see this movie has successfully done its job. It's successfully done its job. It has brainwashed kids and people alike to believe that black people were actually just as bad as some of the white folks during slavery. It's done its job. It has systematically programmed people into believing that black people were just as bad as Europeans. And this coon Cynthia Erivo has the audacity to say that she wants kids to go and see this? Cynthia, you must be smoking dope. Here's some real advice for you kids at home. Boycott this movie and tell all of your friends to do it as well. Now, at this time, I want to take the opportunity to tie something into the story that you might not be aware of, as most media outlets have done a pretty good job at suppressing this story. And the story I want to talk about today is none other than the long-running feud between Comcast, Charter, and Byron Allen's Entertainment Studio Network, or ESN for short. Now, for the people at home who don't know what's going on between Byron Allen, I'll give you a brief synopsis as to what transpired between the two parties, as the story is pretty long and I really don't want to take up any more of your time today. The story goes that Byron Allen, founder, owner, and chief executive officer of Entertainment Studio Network, sued Comcast and Charter, two of the largest cable providers in the world, because he alleged that they refused to carry ESN's content on their network due to racial discrimination. Now, in response to Allen's accusation, Comcast argued that Allen was not able to prove that racial bias was the major factor in their decision not to carry his networks, and as a result, the case should not be heard in court. Now, contrary to what Comcast believed, Allen filed two separate complaints against Comcast and Charter in district court. Unfortunately, both lawsuits were dismissed, giving Comcast and Charter the edge. However, on an appeal, the Ninth Circuit Court reversed Comcast's decision, allowing Allen to proceed with his initial lawsuit so that way it could go to discovery. And for the people at home who are not privy to all this legal jargon, allow me to explain what discovery means. In law, the discovery phase is the exchange of legal information and known facts in a case. Parties in a case are required to participate in the discovery process. This typically means that both parties must hand over information and evidence about a claim, so that way all participants can know what they are facing in a trial. So what does this mean in layman terms? Well, that's pretty simple. Once Byron Allen's lawsuit commenced, Comcast would have no choice but to hand over all of their emails, contracts, texts, and any other information that was requested by Byron Allen's legal team. And with this information, Allen alleged that he would be able to show without a shadow of a doubt that Comcast had been discriminatory towards him and other black business owners. Now this, my friends, is where things get crazy. Because Allen was now allowed to proceed with his case, Allen decided to use the Civil Rights Act of 1866 for grounds of his lawsuit. And for the people at home who don't know what the Civil Rights Act of 1866 is, read a book. Just kidding. Allow me to explain. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 was a law that was created in order to protect the newly freed slaves of December 1865. This law, which is now part of 42 U.S.C. Section 1981, prohibits all racial discrimination in all economic transactions. To be more technical, this law simply states that all non-white people will have pathway to fair contracting and fair opportunity to inclusion. It also says that all persons who are non-white will have the same rights to make and enforce contracts. So what does this cover exactly? Well, that's simple. It covers government contracting, contract between two people such as Byron Allen and Comcast, contracts between an employer and an employee, housing contracts, and so much more. Okay, so now that we understand what the Civil Rights Act of 1866 is, let's get back to the story. Now, before Byron and his legal team could proceed with the lawsuit and move to the discovery phase, Comcast, who was unhappy with the Ninth Circuit Court's decision, decided to appeal to the Supreme Court. Now, according to eyewitness accounts and Byron Allen himself, who has been pretty vocal about the entire ordeal, the Supreme Court wasted little time when it came to rejecting both his and Comcast's case entirely. The problem is, and I want to reiterate, the problem is while the Supreme Court didn't want to hear either party's case, they did decide to listen to Comcast's plea for the but-for standard. And here, my friends, is where things get really scary, like terrifyingly scary. For those of you who are not aware, the but-for standard forces any plaintiff who is filing a lawsuit to prove 100% that the reason that they didn't get their dream job, housing loan, or in this case, a deal with Comcast was because the company discriminated against them 100%. So in layman terms, the but-for rule states that you have to prove that racism was the sole motivating factor for you not obtaining contractual inclusion. And get this, you are not allowed to go to the discovery phase until you prove this. Now, this begs the question, how on earth is someone supposed to prove that you discriminated against them due to the color of their skin, religion, or sex if you can't go to the discovery phase? This has got to be the most asinine thing I have ever heard in my entire life. Because Comcast doesn't want to be sued for racial discrimination, they are trying to change the Civil Rights Act of 1866. And in its place, they are trying to force this new but-for standard. I'm sorry, but fuck you, Comcast. How dare you try to adjudicate something that was put on the books nearly 150 years ago to protect African Americans from discrimination? If you truly had nothing to hide, then there should be no reason why you wouldn't allow this case to go to the discovery phase. That's like if I had a wife and she suspected me of sending nude photos to another woman, and all she wanted to do in order to clear this up was to check my phone, and instead of allowing her to do that and complying with her demand, I denied her that right completely. Now, I don't know about you at home, but if I was truly innocent, I would have no reservations about her going through my phone so that way I could substantiate my innocence. And for the people at home who don't understand how bad this is, allow me to play a clip from the Griot where Byron Allen goes into keen detail as to what's getting ready to transpire if this law goes into effect.
So when I sued them, I said, these numbers don't work. And the Ninth Circuit agreed with me twice. They appealed it, and the Ninth Circuit upheld the decision in our favor twice. And they said, okay, we don't like this decision. We're going to the Supreme Court. And they took it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court rejected 99% of the case, the things they wanted them to listen to. The Supreme Court decided not to listen to the merits of my case against Comcast and against Charter. They decided not to listen to it. They said, but we will use this opportunity to look at the Civil Rights Act of 1866, Section 1981, the Supreme Court. Interesting. And in doing so, what they're saying is Comcast and Charter, we want to use the but-for standard. So for Natasha to use this law that was put on the books 153 years ago to protect her, Natasha cannot use this law, use it, unless Natasha can prove that they discriminated against her. And it was 100% the sole reason, 100% the sole reason they discriminated against Natasha is because she's black.
There are civil rights activists who say that's going to be nearly impossible
Well,
of a standard to uphold.
Of course.
Because who explicitly says, you know, rare exception, that they're not doing business because you're black?
Well, they could actually say, hey, Natasha, check this out. I'm discriminating against you. 99% of the reason I'm not doing business with you is because you're black. And 1% is because you're wearing tennis shoes.
And that would be okay.
And that's okay. And you cannot use this law that was put on the books to protect you 153 years ago to make sure you had a pathway to economic inclusion. Now, this is coming from the #1 and #2 cable operator in America that pulls billions and billions of dollars out of the African American community in the way of subscriber fees. And that's not okay. So that's the position that they've now gotten this case into. They took it to the Supreme Court, not me.
So as you can all clearly see, if Comcast wins this case, the Supreme Court's decision would now affect anyone and everyone who brings a lawsuit under this civil rights statute. Now, why is this important, and why did I choose to bring this up during my review of Harriet Tubman? Well, that's pretty simple. For starters, I wanted to show just how twisted and messed up Comcast is. And in addition, I wanted to point something out that most people might not be aware of. What if I told you that not only is Comcast challenging the Civil Rights Act of 1866, but they are also the devious culprits who created the Harriet Tubman film? And what if I told you that these devils are profiting off of all of the African Americans who go and see this film? And at the same time, behind closed doors, they're doing everything in their power to destroy African American civil rights. And if anyone at home doesn't believe me, once again, I'll prove the validity of my claim. Now, all I did was type Comcast into Google, okay? And as you can clearly see, Comcast owns NBC Universal. NBC Universal owns Focus Features. And Focus Features created the Harriet Tubman movie that showcased black people in a bad light, i.e. bigger law. Now let me turn the camera back to me once again so I can go on in. Do you guys see how foul these dirtbags are? These foul suckers have the audacity to challenge the Civil Rights Act of 1866, something that could destroy the lives of millions of people, by making it almost impossible for any victim of discrimination to seek justice in court. But at the same time, they release a Harriet Tubman film that is supposed to uphold and support civil rights. Is this a joke? Is Comcast sick in the head? This has got to be the biggest oxymoron that I have ever witnessed in my entire life. Now, I've said this once and I'll say it again. Boycott this film and boycott Comcast. And do it now. That's the only solution to this problem. Hit these phallus suckers where it hurts, namely their finances. Stop spending money on their cable services, stop spending money on their films, and stop watching NBC. Kill these dirtbags right where they stand, much like they're trying to kill the Civil Rights Act of 1866.